Andrea Jenkyns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'm going to speak in support of the petition that received over 300,000 signatures, that being regards to leaving on WTO. Mr. Chairman, clearly a free trade agreement with the EU is optimal, and I'm an economic liberal and I believe in the benefits of free trade and open markets. However, leaving the EU under the Prime Minister's deal will restrict our ability to further sign free trade agreements with the most exciting and fastest growing economies in the world, and this cannot be allowed to happen. The withdrawal deal will make the UK a vassal state, a country whose destiny is controlled by the EU and its institutions, and this cannot be allowed to happen as it is a sellout to the British people. Leaving on World Trade Organization terms should not panic the UK. There are positives to leaving under this deal when compared to the Prime Minister's disastrous deal. If we want to take back control of our money, our laws, our borders, and keep our £39 billion trade freely with the rest of the world, then a clean WTO Brexit will achieve this. Some in this place have warned that negotiating a new free trade agreement with third parties will be more difficult and we will not be able to achieve as good a terms than negotiating through the European Union. But I believe this argument is flawed. We all know that the EU is cumbersome, they are over-bureaucratic and full of red tape. For free trade agreements to be signed off in the EU, they need to be approved by every member state. Therefore, the economies and priorities of 27 nations, including individual regions, need to be considered. When negotiating our own free trade deals, we can be proactive and seek out opportunities. We can be flexible whilst the EU is rigid. We can be fast and nimble while the EU is slow and cumbersome. The UK will be free and liberated to sign free trade agreements with the exciting economies of tomorrow. Let us not talk down the UK. We are the 5th largest economy in the world. We are a permanent member of the UN Security Council, and we speak the global language of business. We have world-class universities, we have an incredible global reach, and we sit at the heart of the Commonwealth, which is home to 2.4 billion citizens. I could not be more proud to say that I am British and I believe in Great Britain and the United Kingdom. And we will succeed no matter what our future lies. We will prevail because it is the British people where our strength and dynamism lies, not in being part of the European Union. Mr. Chairman, the reason we are here today is because the Prime Minister's deal has failed, and she's failed to achieve a deal which is good for the UK. But this is the deal before us. The President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, has stated, "I'm totally convinced that this is the only deal possible." The EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, has told the European Parliament the treaty that is on the table is the only deal possible. And the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, has said that the deal agreed is the only possible one. Our Prime Minister has said that this is the only possible deal. But let us not forget what the opposition's Shadow Secretary of State for International Trade said about the Labour's Brexit plan. I won't use a swear word in the chamber, what they used. Yeah, okay. Therefore, by conclusion, if politicians want to respect the outcome of the referendum, then WTO becomes a legitimate option, and it is right that we are here today discussing it. The world has benefited hugely from considerable progress that has been made in trade liberalisation in the last 70 years, but multilateral liberalisation has slowed and it now needs a new champion. The UK can be that champion. The benefits of free trade are clear to see. The world needs a liberalising voice, and the UK can be that voice at a time when open markets are being threatened. The UK will prosper as a WTO member and can immediately start further liberalisation with other WTO members on day one. Tariffs are a concern for some, and I recognise that, but please keep in mind my desire to see less tariffs and less restrictions to trade. Currently, under WTO rules, tariffs vary significantly by sector, but we need to see the bigger picture. In the 1980s, the EU's share of world GDP was around 30%. In 2017, it was around 16%. And by 2022, this is expected to fall further to 15%. The EU has a shrinking share of world trade, and Brexiteers can see the benefits of trading freely with the rest of the world, which is growing at a much faster rate than the EU. The organisation Economists for Free Trade recently released a detailed report which considered the many implications of leaving the EU on WTO terms. In my view, this report shows that although a deal is preferable, we have nothing to fear by leaving on these terms. From an economic perspective, the report showed that under WTO, we would actually be more prosperous as a country than we are now, and a lot better off than under the Prime Minister's withdrawal agreement, which would leave us worse off by a staggering 100 billion. The report also showed that under a no-deal, consumer prices would fall by 8%, and there would be an additional boost to the poorest households by 15%. And I know that many of my constituents would welcome this at a time when ordinary families are feeling the pressure. It is important to note that British exports to WTO countries have grown 3 times faster than those to the European single market since the mid-1980s. In fact, our biggest overseas market is America, and we trade with it on WTO terms. All of this taken together demonstrates that, despite of all the fear-mongering and demonisation of no deal, the reality is that is nothing to fear. We already conduct much of our trade under these terms, which are essentially a set of global enforceable rules that outlaw protectionist tricks, discriminatory tariffs and bureaucratic hurdles. Free and fair trade for both of us and global partners is the achieved result. After we leave, trade between the UK and EU can move to World Trade Organization rules, and this would mean tariffs averaging about 3%. There are some products which have high tariffs, for example, cars 10% and a 4.5% tariff on components from the EU. However, car companies can withstand a 10% tariff on sales into the EU because they've already benefited from a 15% depreciation in sterling. And border checks on components from the EU will be unnecessary, counterproductive for EU exporters, and also illegal under WTO rules, which prohibits unnecessary checks. The heads of firms such as Dyson, JCB, Northern Ireland's Wrightbus support Brexit because they can see the long-term benefits of us being free from the EU's red tape. A WTO Brexit can achieve this. The decision to leave the EU may have been one that I agreed with, but it is the British people, not politicians in this place, that decided to leave, and their decision must be upheld. Mr. Chairman, I was only elected in this place in 2015. I'm not a career politician, and I've never worked in the Westminster bubble before being elected. I may not have had the traditional route into politics, but I strongly think that that is positive. Trust in elected politicians is vital. If the public are going to have faith in this place, in the democratic process, and trust in us as their elected representatives, then I aim to uphold that trust. It is naive to think that we know better. No, Mr. Chairman, my constituents, they know best. They know how best to run their lives, how to spend their money, and they know what is best for their country. They voted for Brexit, and Brexit must prevail, be that under WTO Brexit or a better deal than the Prime Minister's deal. My constituency voted in favour of leaving the EU, Yorkshire and Humber region voted in favour of leaving the EU, and the country voted to leave the EU. We need to leave the European Union and its institutions and take advantage of the opportunities that Brexit can deliver. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to see a deal. A vision like the Prime Minister's Lancaster House speech would have satisfied the referendum result. However, the Prime Minister has decided mistakenly to no longer pursue that vision. Moving to WTO rules will achieve that global Britain vision. We want to be in Europe, but not run by Europe. We want to be a truly global free trading powerhouse, and this still can be achieved. This can only be achieved by trading under WTO organisation rules. Let us now look to the future so we all can be free from the EU, free to make our own decisions, and free to chart our own destiny. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.